Shivali, now you can start.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Shivali Prasad, and it is my privilege today to welcome you all to the first event of the 3 days virtual quality improvement program for engineering and technology fraternity organized by Student Branch of IEEE BBDNITM. Our branch has been organizing myriad events on virtual platforms and competitions on various topics, including webinars on advanced signal processing techniques, IEEE Student Member Development Program, different online quizzes covering International Women in Engineering Day, pandemic lessons in managing health, etc. So, on behalf of the IEEE BBD and ITM branch, I extend a warm thank you to everyone who has been supporting us and attending the programs. Thank you so much. This program is organized with an objective of upgrading the expertise and capabilities of students and teaching faculty alike. The program will enable the participants to understand the culture of research and better teaching and learning capabilities. Thank you so much for joining us today. Please take a quick look at the instructions and then we shall proceed. Those of you who have been regularly attending our events know the drill already, but for the new ones, I request you to please take the instructions seriously and abide by it. Let's work together for a great event. So, present amongst us today is our chief guest of honor, the chair of IEEE Indian Council, Dr. S.N. Singh. Dr. Singh is a very eminent personality in our field. He obtained his MTech and PhD in electrical engineering from Indian Institute of Technology, Kanpur in 1889 and 1995. He has been a dedicated person of academics since a long time. He received several awards, including Young Engineer Award 2000 of Indian National Academy of Engineering, that is INAE, Khosla Research Award of IIT Roorkee, and Young Engineer Award of CBIP New Delhi, India, 1996. Professor Singh is the recipient of Humboldt Fellowship of Germany in 2005 and 2007, and Otto Monstedt Fellowship of Denmark from 2009 to 2010. Professor Singh became the first Asian to receive 2013 IEEE Educational Activity Board Meritorious Achievement Award in Continuing Education. He is also the recipient of INAE Outstanding Teacher Award 2016 and IEEE Region 10 Asia Pacific Region Outstanding Volunteer Award 2016. Professor Singh has published more than 440 papers in international national journals, conferences, and supervised 29 PhD. He has also written 2 books on electric power generation, transmission, and distribution, and second is Basic Electrical Engineering, published by PHI India. Professor Singh has completed 3 dozen of projects in India and abroad. He was the chairman of IEEE UP section for 2013 and 14, and presently he is the IEEE Region 10 Conference and Technical Seminar Coordinator, and he is also the India Council Chairman elect of 2017 of IEEE, which we all know as the largest professional body in engineering. Welcome, sir. It's an honor to have you here today. Now I would like to invite our director, Professor Dr. Bhavish Kumar Chauhan, sir, for the welcome address.
Thank you, Anchor. On behalf of the management, chairperson, Mrs. Alka Das, and other management members, and the student branch, as well as the institute, the Babu Banarsi Das Institute of Technology Management, I welcome chief guest of the day, who is a highly decorated professor. Beside that, right now, for a couple of years, having charge of Vice Chancellor of Madan Mohan Malviya University of Technology, as well as IEEE India Council Chair. Chairman of UP section of IEEE, and the other eminent professor like Professor Elisa Barney, who is IEEE Student Activity Committee Chair, and also a professor at Boise State University. other eminent guests like Professor Nitin Saxena, who has been a professor at Soto University of Ethiopia, as well as right now at one of the leading institute, KAIT, Ghaziabad, as an associate professor of research, and Professor Mohammed Ben Baous, also professor from the Brest University of France, IEEE branch counselor, faculty counselor, and head of the Department of EE and EL, Professor Rafiq Ahmed, and the other office bearers, starting with the chairman of this IEEE Student Branch, Mr. Shrikant Singh, Vice Chairman, Mr. Marut Nandan Tripathi, and Secretary Sakshi Priyam, and other office bearers and volunteers who have been doing a great job. The theme of today is really very relevant, that is the quality improvement program. So I really appreciate the office bearers of this IEEE BBDNITM Student Branch to having taken this topic, because it has a multiple dimension as has been listed in the program. So I wish the success for this event, and I thank Honorable Chief Guest for having taken time out of his extremely hectic schedule. So I thank him on personal as well as on behalf of the Institute and IEEE branch. Thank you very much, sir, for your kindness and your mentoring, the way you have been guiding activities, not only at India level, but also making a contribution at a global level. So it's a really honor to have you. And also, I offer deepest gratitude to Professor Elisa Barney for blessing us with her kind presence. And I'm sure today's deliberation will be very meaningful to all the professionals, the teachers, and the representative from the industry, as well as the students. So all the best to this, and thank you very much. Over to the anchor.
Thank you so much, sir. Now it's my humble request to our chief guest, Dr. Singh, to please share a few words.
Okay, good morning to all of you, and thank you for BBD and ITM for giving this opportunity to share my views on the quality improvement program, which is organized by this university, as well as IEEE. It's the logo I can see, and really I can see this Miss Elisa is also going to talk on the various aspects of this. And I know Bhavesh from very long time, because Bhavesh is from our electrical engineering, and he was even earlier also BBD, then he was in Noida side and Ghaziabad side, and finally came here. Now coming to the topic and relevancy, as we all know, that's education is the backbone of any country. And once we come on the education, so as we know, the educations of different kind. It may be a primary education, middle educations, higher educations, technical education, then agriculture and medical educations, and so on. So after coming in the higher education, technical and the agriculture, this technological aspect is basically giving a revolution for the industrialization, giving many other aspects for humanities. And this technology is the very relevant for really to ease out to overcome this. Now coming to this education is the backbone, as I said. But for this education system is not enough unless until we are having a good quality teachers. Now for the quality of the teachers, no doubt it is not related to, I've seen many higher educations having very good researcher. They cannot be a good teachers. It is not necessary that they will be teachers, but they can be. So we require a good quality of the teachers, and always the teacher means his quality should be improved all the time, because the pace is changing, the technological advancement is changing, and also whole societal expectation is changing. In the same time, we need basically the teachers should also enhance. I found many teachers, they are not even though enhancing their capability. They are having huge capability. Our teachers are very intelligent, I have seen, very creative, if they are putting their all energy in the very proper directions for the making this our technical education very good. This conference is in this period, as we all know, this is a COVID-19 pandemic situation. And in this, basically you can see we are unable to meet face to face, but no doubt, this has given a digital online platform where we are discussing and we are talking. This COVID-19, I can tell you, you can see this event. This event started on the exact time. But being a face-to-face, I have not seen any function which is started when it was scheduled. Even the people started joining before the time. So this has given a punctuality of the humanities. People are joining at the same time, and whatever the time is assigned. So this is a crisis. I'm not saying this crisis should happen again and again. I always wish that this should go out as early as possible. But this has given a lot of opportunity and the lesson to we human beings. And in this COVID-19, we are trying to utilize our knowledge. We are utilizing our resources. We are trying to connect each other through the virtual mode. But at the same time, it is very giving a lot of opportunity. It is affecting our life. We have the three life, I believe, any education system. That is your professional life, your personal life, and third is your social life. All these three lives are affected. Personal life, you can say, some people say it is not affected, it is much more closer because people are in the houses, they are spending more time with the family. But you can say it is giving in another direction. So that is also slightly changed. And maybe the better or wrong, it is up to individual to individual. But we'll see your professional life. Professional life is going to be very tough for many, many people. Those are the government servants, no doubt for them. Those are working in the administration, a lot of very tough time. But those are in the middle systems, they are enjoying the life because no need to go to the office and basically they are getting the salary. Those are even though very poor and very just like outsource or contractual and other things, just you can say the starting has happened and this people are not even though getting job or their salaries are also cut. So the professional life is going to be very tough time. Social, no doubt the social media is there, but still the social, we say we should have a social function, social event, even though for this event also there was, if suppose it would not have been in the online, there should have been a inaugural ceremony, this and that, chat, either. So that connectivity is missing, but no doubt we are saving a lot of time in traveling, in the economical, because the travel cost was related. So many, many things we are saving. So that's we are getting a lot of opportunities, the time, economy, and also the pain and energy on the body. So this event is giving, and I just can see a lot of people are doing the webinar and connecting a lot of people. Just you can imagine this here, this Elisa is connected to far off from us. So a lot of people are connected through the webinars and a lot of our audience are getting benefited from these type of events. And so really, I appreciate the BBDNITM because they are taking one lead for this 3-day event is basically related to the quality improvement program, because the quality is also, as you know, is a very difficult word to define and quantify. We know this is a quality, we say the quality water, quality food, quality life, everything quality is the adjective. But how to define, how to say it is a quality education? What will be the parameters? How you can judge yourself? Who will be judging and say the quality? Nobody, everybody say my quality is better. But there is another mechanism. There are several other ways that we can say the quality is improved. But I say if you are improving yourself, you are certainly your qualities keep on going to be improved. So it is always better that we should have these type of events for all adding the values to the society, to our humankind, to our peers, and at large for the national development. And in this BBDNITM is doing one of the work, and that is basically very much appreciable. I thank basically the Bhavesh and his team, all the people those are connected, and they are having IEEE Student Branch. And as you know, the IEEE is the voluntary position, and no doubt they said a lot about me about the IEEE, and IEEE UP section is one of the very, very vibrant section. And since I represent now whole India as chair as IEEE Council, and also I representing the R10 as a vice chair technical activities. So I'm very deeply involved in the IEEE volunteership, where we want that our volunteers should come across and help the other volunteers in this way. And in this COVID situation also, IEEE organized many, many events, I can tell you, and very, very popular about the research, how to write the paper, how to go for the education, how to go for accreditation. Even though yesterday, day before yesterday, we have the ABET program of IEEE, and more than 1,000 people were connected through the TV, IEEE TV and other program. So a lot of events are happening across the globe. In India, no doubt we are doing a lot of at the IC level, India Council level, various sections level, various chapters level, and various other affinity groups level. In this scenario, it is very, very good. I appreciate. I'll not take much time because we want to listen other people, and I really appreciate the action taken by Bhavesh and his team. So it is very much appreciable. And I wish for these 3 days will be very, very useful for all the viewers and the listeners of this program. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for recognizing our efforts. It means a lot to us, and we promise to work hard as a student branch and continue to spread the message of IEEE. Now, for our speaker for today is Dr. Elisa Barney. She's the IEEE Student Activities Committee Chair. I'll quickly introduce her to our audience. Dr. Elisa Barney Smith joined the faculty at Boise State University in September 1999. Her research focuses on image processing and machine learning. She has been a visiting professor at University of the Saarland, Germany, Lauria, France, and Telecom Paris Tech, France. From 1989 to 1993, she worked as an engineer at the Naval Undersea Warfare Center in New London. In 1993, she had a research internship at the NATO Sakeland Center in La Spezia, Italy. Her work at both NUWC and Sakeland Center involved designing automatic target classification algorithms and systems that utilize passive acoustic data. Elisa was an adjunct faculty in the Computer Science Department at the State University of New York at Plattsburgh for the spring of 1999, and she was the adjunct faculty at the Thames Valley State Technical College in Norwich from 1992 to 1993. She has also earned secondary teaching certification in maths and physics for the state of New York. Dr. Barney Smith is a member of IEEE and SPIE. She was the chair of the Boise section of IEEE from 2000 to 2003 and the chair of Region 6's Northeast area from 2000 to 2013. Today, she has agreed to collab with us. Thank you so much, ma'am, and welcome. I invite you to please start the session. The stage is all yours.
I'm sorry about that. I pushed the wrong button to unmute myself. As the chair of Student Activities Committee, I'm very excited to be here. It's nice to see the new initiative of Virtual Speakers Bureau is taking off and that you are engaged in that. And hopefully you're engaged in other IEEE activities. I'm going to see if I can now present from my computer, and I will turn on my slides. Okay, can you confirm that you can see my slides? Can you confirm that you can hear me?
No, ma'am.
Ma'am, your slides are not visible.
Not visible.
Okay, we'll keep trying.
Okay.
Try pushing more and more buttons here. There we go. That might work. There, what about now? Is the slides visible now?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
okay,
ma'am.
great. So I've been given a series of talks over the last several years, starting with a talk at my church, talking about some of my research, and a lot of my research these days focuses on digital humanities. And while that's not a topic that you actually take in school, I want to show how I got to it from the work that I was doing on document image processing. It got me into this field, which I consider very interesting, on digital humanities. Digital image processing, document image processing, Quite often involves image pre-processing, noise removal. That's something that you learn about in an introductory image processing course. It's followed by optical character recognition, which is a pretty straightforward example of something you do with pattern recognition, machine learning. And it quite often involves linguistic modeling as well, which means that you can use knowledge we have about how the words and language are formed to help improve what we're recognizing. And we use a lot of this in a lot of work we do in everything we're using on the internet these days. The process of optical character recognition starts off with having a book, scanning it on a scanner, then you get an image of a page of text. We want to then convert that image into actual text, where we're able to recognize what each of the individual letters are. And then we might want to do some formatting to it so it actually looks like the original text that was in the book, but still we can recognize it. When we talk about OCR, we're usually thinking about text that's pretty straightforward, just what you think when you type. This is a sample of text. But that's not the type of text we're often working with. The text quite often has a lot of degradations to it. And the types of degradations are many. And all these degradations make it much more difficult to do the work, and that's why I still have a research topic. The degradations can occur through printing, scanning, photocopying, age, stains. There's lots of things that happen to our documents and cause the degradations. I started off my research 25 years ago looking at developing models, mathematical models about how the process affects the image. And if we can understand what's going on, we should be able to avoid introducing it, and the quality of our documents has improved significantly in those 25 years. And we should be able to compensate for the degradation in what we're actually producing for recognition, and that can improve the quality of the recognition. My doctoral work was based around developing these mathematical models for the degradation process, and I developed lots of fancy equations for them. And we can use those degradation models to try and either develop an adaptive filter that can improve the quality of the image, or just simply help with the recognition. Also worked on looking at actual noise. When we have an image that's grayscale, noise is just measured as SNR. We can look at the standard deviation of the noise, and you can go from low noise to high noise. But when we have bi-level image, that doesn't apply anymore. We can have the same amount of additive noise, same standard deviation in the noise, and different levels of observed noise in our image, depending on some other optical properties. So we can develop a method that can measure that more quantitatively. And again, more nice equations for that. But we can use those equations now to take an image and denoise it, which means we can then work with those images better. And that's the work I did when I was in Laureate in France in 2009. Also work on looking at the actual images and modeling the printing process. We usually think of our images as having very, very sharp edges. But in reality, if you look at what comes off a laser printer, it's really pretty ragged. And so we can model what is actually in a pixel. But this is a real pixel, a lot more noisy. So starting with that background, I then moved into looking at how can we use this information in the field of the humanities. Things to understand what's going on in people's lives, documents that have a meaning to us as a culture. The definition of digital humanities is that it's an area of research and teaching at the intersection of computing and humanities. Of course, I'm coming at it from the computing side. Most of you are coming at it from the computing side, but we live in the humanities. The first project I want to talk to you about is World War I postcards, Feldpost, the German word for field post. And so the post is going out to the soldiers in the field, from them to their family and from the family to them. I did this work with another computer science professor, Gernot Fink in Dortmund, and a historian, Britta Blay. Again, we work together with the engineering, computer science, and the humanities in order to make one of these projects work. The collection was a bunch of postcards from World War I. We had initially 6,000 cards that were scanned with a high-resolution camera. And what they were looking at is that the text was written in a couple of different writing fonts, different writing styles. Not exactly a different language, but two different ways of writing the same Latin characters. And we wanted to be able to analyze in these postcards information about the text, the pictures, and put that together to see what the cultural and historical implications were. Who was writing to whom and what were they saying? So here we get to the fun part. We get to look at pictures. Here's an example of a postcard. And you can see the stuff that was machine printed on it is pretty clear. But the text that's written there is very, very faded. Here's another example. Again, faded text. Also, we've got these stamps, these postmarks, which are overwriting on top of the handwritten material, making it harder to see. Another pretty picture. Another pretty picture. So we have all this information, and here the text is written sometimes horizontally, sometimes vertically, machine printed text and stuff around it. How can we separate this information out? And after we've separated the information out, then make sense of it. You can all look at it and say, well, these are an address block. This is the main letter, and this is something that was left over at the end. But a computer can't do that. It needs more information. And again, as computer scientists and engineers, we can help with that. So let's take that first example image with the faded text. And by applying relatively simple image enhancement techniques, we can enhance it, and therefore the text is a lot easier to see. And the next step would then be to remove some of the noise in the background. Here's another example where you can now see the text a lot more clearly. The next thing is to be able to identify where are those postmarks. Postmarks at this era of time were always around. So therefore we can apply a circle detection algorithm, and all the colored marks here are things that a circle detection algorithm will find. The blue ones are false alarms that can be removed by applying certain threshold information about the percentage of the circle that's complete, as well as the radius for the circle. It works fine here, but you can see right here, this particular arc was removed by that heuristic. All of these postmarks are very deteriorated. This one here was on the edge of the card, so it doesn't have the full circle. This one here, the ink was not uniformly applied to the stamp, and therefore part of it came out much lighter and was not fully imprinted. Here, the stamp is a lot lighter, did not have enough ink on it, and the handwriting is a lot clearer than the stamp. Here we've got the stamp in the background, obliterating some of the postmark. And here the stamp was actually, the glue fell off and the stamp fell off. So what was actually part of the postmark was stamped onto the stamp, which is no longer physically present. But we want to be able to take all of these stamps and say, well, what styles are they? Because they come in a lot of different styles. And these different styles have different meanings to them. Something that had to do with the Red Cross, so the health part. One that had more to do with the trains. And then some which are just generally ones that apply to the different localities where they were sent. So we can work on trying to cluster them into ones which have a similar design. And that was one of the projects I worked on with that. And we can come up by merging them. We got to adjust the fact that they have different rotation, but we can then align them. And when we do that alignment, correcting for the rotation, we can then get a good template for what is our postcard stamp. And with that, we can then backfit and extract the information that comes in automatically. The next thing which we want to be able to do is to separate the information. We want to be able to separate out the handwritten from the different lines, both horizontal and vertical, from the postmark and from the stamp, because everything has its own meaning to the postcard. A simple line detection algorithm can identify where there are lines, and then we can use an algorithm for removing those lines, and we now have the text without the lines. Here's another example with a vertical line, and we can remove the vertical line. Now the lines do not interfere with the text. We can go into the text recognition from here in a much better situation. We've got all the stamps and the postmarks, and those are of interest to researchers. We know a lot of people collect stamps, but there's even more information in the postmark that says when and where the letter came. So we need to separate this because they're usually intertwined. We can remove those stamps by looking at different color patterns. The stamps are red, and the postage stamps are red, and the postmark is black. So we can separate that and remove that out. Now we have a pretty picture of the stamp, and we can then likewise remove the stamp, and we just have our postmark. Now we can much more easily see that this one was sent from Jerusalem. The letters written in the Hebrew text are kind of a clue for that too, but it was not obvious when we're busy looking at stuff intertwined. Here's another example. Most people think these are fun to look at. Removing the postmark, removing the stamp. Another one, removing the postmark, removing the stamp. And that one there, again, is much easier now to read what was in this postmark. So there's a lot more information we can extract by using image processing tools, knowledge of color, as well as knowledge of shape. The blue text, again, is another color cue where we can extract the text, and this is a lot easier to read than this one here. And we can remove the text, albeit not perfect, and we now have better access to the postmarks and the postage stamps. And we can do further analysis. The second project was in France with Bart Lameroy, a professor of computer science, and Thomas Watt-Marchand, who was actually a typographer and an artist. Again, we need both the technical and the non-technical for these projects. There, they were interested in Renaissance era printing, old-fashioned printing presses where we have lead type that's being pressed onto the letter. And the typographer was interested in this lead type. What were the shapes of all the different letters that they had in the lead type? Because these lead type produced all these really nice documents. The problem is that this lead type was usually lost or melted down to form something else. All we have left are the documents, but we've got quite a few of them. We can again use our image processing magic, and from there virtually extract what is that type. And our goal with that type is then to turn it into a computer form, which is what your computer actually uses to produce all this text. That's done by a bunch of points and splines in between them, and that's how all the text is recognized. We need to produce one of these templates for every letter in the character set. This can allow us to make new historical reproductions, analyze the style, how it changed over time, and also evaluate what the artisans were doing from a business structure as they were making and selling type. Here's an example where we were working on one particular essay written in 1598, quite a while ago. Here's a picture of that. We can take that and we can recognize all the content of that. That's relatively straightforward optical character recognition. But because this was written so long, it includes characters that are no longer used in English. We can replace them with our modern characters, and then replace it with a modern version of the words, because the words that were used 400 years ago are also no longer used. Now, just reading this is possible. It gives us a lot of information, but it doesn't seem the same as reading a 500-year-old document. So now we want to be able to take knowledge of the type to be able to take a boring piece of plain text that we're able to recognize. We can even possibly translate that into English. We've got really good translators nowadays. But we want to now be able to take that text and turn it into a document that now looks like it's 500 years old, gives us the feeling of having a 500-year-old document, but now it's in a form which we can read. And I think all of you can read this far better than the original. And yet it still feels like you're reading a historic document. Well, how can we do that? We need knowledge of what all the characters look like. We can segment the page into individual characters. This is a connected components algorithm. But the characters are very heavily degraded. Some of them are broken. There's extra pieces of ink in places. We got to work around that. Once we have the individual characters, we want to find all the ones that are the same character. And we then be able to take all of those, similar to what I did with this postage cancellation marks. We want to be able to combine them, merge them, until we get down to a single example, and from that, be able to come up with an example of what that character looked like in detail. And with that, we can put the splines together and make our templates for each of the characters, which we can then feed into a word processing program. So here's looking at some of the research I was doing with that. And with that, we can look at different ways of combining those characters, because there's no one way. And so we can look at several different things, as whether we needed higher resolution or lower resolution, and whether taking an average of black and white or an average of gray produced a better output. We did decide that the little bit higher resolution was better, and that the gray level was better to average than the black and white. Then take that information, and from there we can represent it as a character. And the character comes out with our boundaries, but that character can be represented through a skeleton, and we can then measure the different pieces of the strokes that are built into it, and look at the different features stylistically that come from it. And we want to be able to capture all this information. So there's lots of information we want to be able to use as we analyze these characters. The other thing is the fact that when we look at the skeletonization, it doesn't always represent where we actually would think about it if we were looking at it. The red marks are really more accurate, so we need to do correction to the skeletonization in order to give us a template that's actually much more applicable to what we're trying to accomplish. So as we're looking at this, I want you to think about what it goes into developing these problems. The artist, the historian, the humanist, they come at it just knowing what they want to have at the end. But as a technical person, you need to be thinking about what are the steps that go into developing this process. And some of the things that we need to think about for this project were how to select the characters. Do we pick ones that don't have defects or ones that do? How many do we need? And then should they all be aligned before merging? Grayscale, color, how do we merge them? There's a lot of different things that are involved in these problems. And it always develops down into saying, how are we going to analyze that? Bringing your engineering and computer science skills into play. From there, we need to figure out what are those algorithms and the parameters. A lot of these are algorithms that are relatively well established, but we need to use our engineering knowledge in order to solve the problems. As we're looking at them, there's other issues we need to consider. What's the spacing between the characters? And we can look at some consistency that all these serifs are the same. And so we can then, once we get an individual character, we can merge between the different characters to come up with a better answer. The third project I want to talk about is a copper scroll from the Qumran area in the Middle East. Again, I worked with a humanist who's an expert in historical languages, as well as other technical people, and the scroll's owned by a private collector. This is a scroll made of copper, and we usually think of scrolls being made of paper, but similar to it, it was rolled up. But with metal, as you roll it and unroll it, it gets wrinkled. And this particular scroll belongs to the collection of the Dead Sea Scrolls. These sea scrolls are 2,000 years old, and they contain a lot of information about the Hebrew and Christian Bible, the religious texts, which are very important to a large number of people in the world, as well as just containing a lot of historical information. Here's a picture of me with the collector and the scroll. It's not really very big, but you can see how wrinkled it is. But the way that it was written on was not with ink, but by embossing, by pushing the letters into it. And you can see ruling lines similar to what you might write on in an elementary school classroom on a paper. But some of those lines are no longer visible because everything's really pretty crinkled. And this crinkling adds new lines, which obliterates the actual text. This whole idea of the Dead Sea Scrolls started back in the 1940s when 3 shepherds discovered some scrolls in the desert, and they just wanted to sell the leather. And as that leather started being sold, somebody said, hey, there's something written on it. Let's not turn it into shoes. Let's save it and look at what's there. Most of them are leather. A few of them are papyrus, paper. But there's one other scroll that's made of metal. And the one that my collector friend has is a second other one of metal. So they're very, very rare to have them in metal. And there 2 of them are very different from each other. But they still might help share information with each other. There are some other amulets that have been found in other sites, which are also made of metal. So they do exist historically. Ours is not the only one, but it's the only one in the Dead Sea Scrolls category. We had, again, using our science, we did a core sample of the science, and we discovered that with that, what its chemical compound is, mostly copper, but we were able to say this is pretty consistent with the metal that would have been around in that area at that time period. So we do think that these scrolls, this new scroll, is historically accurate and is not a modern forgery. With that scroll, we still want to know how old is it. We think we know when the Dead Sea Scrolls came from, but we can still get more information based on what's written in there, because writing styles change. Where is it from? Because they did not leave a lot of information. Who was the message for? And what did it say? It's pretty hard for me to read that. I bet you can't read that. And even our linguistic friend is having a hard time reading that. And again, we want to try and tie in the humanist side. What is the historical significance of whatever is written there? And when and where was that scroll produced? It must have had a purpose. To help you see it, here's just a little bit more zoomed in version of the sample. You can see there's a lot of rust, even though it's copper, a little bit of oxidization. Turning it into black and white makes it a little bit easier to see, but still it's not very easy to see because of shadows. Here's some images to let you see some of the 3-dimensional aspects of it, because that's really a key aspect of this, is the fact that it's a 3-dimensional object. It also shows you how wrinkled the whole thing was. It gives you a good perspective of this being a 3-dimensional object, no longer a 2-dimensional piece of paper like you write on most days. So with this image, what can we do? Well, we can use that depth information, and with that depth information, this is not complete, still working on it, We can now start to better see some characters built in there and better see the ruling lines that separate the different zones for the different characters. Some of the problem comes that these are not just A, B, C. We don't really know what those letters should be looking like. So we don't know what we're looking for, which really adds to the mystery as well. So I hope this gave you an idea about how engineering can be used for something more than a pure engineering project. I can show you how we can use engineering for the digital humanities. I find it really fascinating. The projects I find very fun to work on. And who knows, maybe we'll solve some mysteries. We're combining the engineering and computer science with the humanities to make a much happier world. Thank you for inviting me to be part of your seminar series you've got going on here. I'm now available for some questions.
Shrikant,
Yes,
do you have
sir.
any questions?
Yeah.
Any que-
So we have opened for the question session. So if is any questions regarding the what ma'am has told on the topic, so you can ask.
Ma'am, I have a question. How can relate this topic in terms of electrical engineering as well as electrical and electronics engineering?
The image processing is electrical engineering. Most of you in your studies will take a signal processing class. That's a one-dimensional signal processing class. Image processing is just taking that to 2 dimensions, two-dimensional signal processing. So we use image processing for several of those tasks. The other part is the computer science with the several different things in the computer science which are involved in these projects. So image processing is part of electrical engineering, two-dimensional signal processing, together with the pattern recognition from computer science.
And ma'am, my next question is how undergraduate students can do research in this topic?
It's relatively easy. You just need to get together with the professor, usually. Also go over, and when you can physically go over to the humanities department at your university and talk to the people there. What questions do they have? I do know a lot of Indian universities have undergraduate research going on. I'm collaborating with a researcher in Kolkata, and he's always bringing undergraduate students in on the projects we're working on. So I'm sure you can do the same thing at your university with some of your professors, that there's projects and you can work with the professors on those projects. I think you all need to do a senior project, and it could certainly be something related to digital humanities.
Okay, thank you very much, ma'am.
Ma'am, thank you very much, ma'am. Actually, having spared such a valuable time out of your hectic schedule, my question is that since you are, chair of IEEE student activities at a, international level, what challenges do you see, or which means what change that you foresee in terms of IEEE activities? Though I'm slightly diverting to the theme, but since your designation is that, realizing this pandemic time, means what change, gradual change, or means what challenges that you foresee that this will have as an effect, an after effect maybe, in time to come.
Well, the short-term problems we're seeing is student branches, when the initial shutdowns happened, the student branches disbanded and stopped having events. Now, as you can see from your university, we're holding this event, and that's a way of getting students engaged again. So the trouble we're seeing is just getting students back going. In North America, our semesters will start in August. And I think as they get started up in August, student branches will come back into session doing things remotely. All student members should be getting an email soon from me giving a bunch of ideas of what student branches can do while they are physically isolated and doing classes remotely. It just requires you to change your thoughts into how you can do things different than what you were used to do it before. There's plenty of opportunities, just like you're seeing with your little conference here. You just need to think about the fact that it's there. So that's really the biggest challenge we're seeing now, is to make students aware and get them back up and going as things are getting going. Okay, I saw a text question there pop up about the script. The Dead Sea Scroll was not in English or Latin characters. It's in some sort of something similar to Hebrew, but not Hebrew, a much older form.
Hello, ma'am. My name is Anand, and I have a question.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, ma'am. Just you told about the digital humanity, and you discussed the topic related to the text translation or text extraction or image extraction more specifically. And through the manuscript, you can extract the content as it is. But what about the psychology? Whatever the core concern when this manuscript was written, how we can get an idea about that? Is there any algorithm or tool you are looking forward besides to extract the text only? You can able to have an idea that what is happening, what is going on in the mind of the person who is actually written the content at that time.
For the Dead Sea Scroll, we're not really looking at that so much, but I have another digital humanity project I did not talk about, talking about some stuff from a American writer from the 1800s, and we're there trying to say what was he thinking about as he was writing his novels, and we're looking at stuff he put into his drafts and the notes he would write on books as he was reading them, and seeing if we could use that to say what he was thinking. And there we're looking at word pair frequencies, what words tend to occur together with other words in his notes as he was drafting his books, and what words in the books he was reading were being underlined most frequently. So we can put those words together, looking at frequencies and combinations, and from there extract some things about what was important to somebody as they were writing.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Mm-hmm. I think there was another text question that came and went about OCR, and a lot of that, there's a lot of new techniques that are coming out. Some of them are deep learning, and there's several different ways. I just graduated a PhD student from Bangladesh 2 months ago, and he came up with a new way of trying to do OCR. So there's lots of different new things, and there's conferences all the time as researchers are coming up with new methods to actually recognize the text.
Ma'am, since dozens of young teachers are attending these programs, many of them. So, like in this pandemic time, like as a teacher, because of course you are a professor yourself, maybe the theme is too wide. But what maybe two suggestions or one suggestion you would like to give to young teachers, that in these times of, pandemic times, how they should really keep them relevant and adapt themselves to these situations. So is there any suggestions or tips that you would like to give that can improve them in terms of quality?
The feedback I got from my students this spring once I went to teaching remotely was that they liked my class because my lectures were interactive and not just me reading a bunch of PowerPoint slides. That other professors came through and just put up some PowerPoint slides and talked monotonously for an hour and said, okay, any questions, class is over. But I was able to use, we use Zoom for our classes. I was able to use that by putting some slides up, writing on the slides, stopping every 3 or 4 slides, asking questions, having students ask questions. So even though we're not physically together, you can still interact. And in all classes when you're teaching, it's very important to have the students engaged and not just falling asleep. This is not going to be a hit Hollywood or Bollywood movie where you just sit back with your feet up and watch. You need to be part of it, part of the learning, because you are the ones doing the learning, not the professor. So you need to be engaged as you're watching the lecture, asking questions. And if it's a large class, that's harder to do. But then that means that outside of class, students have to take the responsibility to ask the professor and to work with the other students to jointly discuss the material and extract more knowledge.
Thank you so much, Professor Elisa Barney.
Ma'am, our next question is how to improve the text OCR accuracy.
I think that's the one I tried to answer, where there's lots of new methods that are coming out for text recognition. We used to take characters and we used to break them into individual letters and say, what is the letter? But now we're looking at connected ones. And particularly it's an issue in India where a lot of the scripts are connected scripts. They don't come in individual characters. The characters are naturally, the only way that they exist, are connected. And so there's a lot of new algorithms out there that are looking at the two-dimensional character as it's going across a series of letters as being sort of like a time signal of changing the different letters. And can we look at that as a signal and extract from there what's coming in there? A lot of that looks at modeling what characters come near each other. And there's a couple of very common methods for that. Some of it's looking at the words as a whole. Can we recognize it as a global word, as an image recognition, or taking a moving window, moving across the character? Or the method that my PhD student did was saying, we know what the letters look like. Do I find each letter that we're looking for? And he was doing that with the Bangla script. And with that, it handles the diacritics quite well.
Okay, thank you very much, ma'am. Ma'am, our next question is asking by one participant, Selvati. How can you identify whether these samples you show are English or what language?
Well, for each of those projects I was working on that I showed you, we knew in advance whether it was English or French or German. And then the scroll, we know it's not English, not French, not German. We don't really know what it is yet. You tend to look at what the characters are, what the frequency of the combinations of the characters are. In English, the letter E is the most common letter, whereas in other languages, it's not. So therefore, we can change, if we look at character frequency, you can quite often determine language from that. Some languages have different diacritics, so you see which ones are present, and from that you can also determine what the language is. But the projects I'm working on, we didn't need to do that. We're going to try and take on that scroll. Once I can extract the characters a little bit better, then we have a linguist who's manually going to look at it, and with his knowledge of scripts from 2,000 years ago, he's going to use that knowledge and, as a human, make a decision.
Ma'am, Any more questions from the participants? Okay, I think you have given answers of all the questions. I would like to ask one more question apart from this presentation. Ma'am, you are honorable IEEE activity chair. So, ma'am, would you like to give any message to our IEEE student members or IEEE student chair?
I want to thank you for being members. I want to thank you for taking the initiative to expand your knowledge, and as both your technical knowledge and your professional knowledge. We think that's really one of the best things that students can do, and we're always excited when we see students doing it. I want you to be aware that there's a lot of resources out there for you as IEEE members. If you're not aware of them, you need to go looking for them. We keep telling you what's out there. You need to go look for them and try and take advantage of them. We make them there available for you. Take advantage of them. IEEE is putting a lot of effort into providing you stuff, and we very much want you to be able to use it to improve your knowledge, your career. And we hope that as you graduate, that you'll stay as IEEE members, become volunteers, as you've seen other volunteers, me, and you had your India chair volunteer. There's a lot of room for you to become volunteers in the sections and all sorts of different places in IEEE. We hope that you will choose to maintain your membership and to become an active IEEE member. Maybe not an officer, but there's lots of different ways to contribute to the society and to the profession.
Thank you very much.
A lot of stuff to offer.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Okay. Well, thank you for inviting me.
Okay, Shrikant, please proceed further.
Yes, Sakshi, now you can come over. It's over to you, Sakshi.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I, Sakshi Priyam, the treasurer of IEEE BBDNITM Student Branch, Lucknow, extend my heartiest thanks to you, ma'am, for sharing all your views and all your giving such an informative session. Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much for giving your valuable time and guiding us. Thank you so much.
Thank you for inviting me. It was an honor.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Now I request our branch counselor, sir, to say a few words regarding the feedback of this event. It's over to you, sir.
Thank you, Shrikant.
Thank you so much.
A very good afternoon, everyone. It is my great pleasure and honor to deliver the vote of thanks for this event to all delegates assembled here. I, on behalf of Department of Electrical Engineering, BBD ITM Lucknow, as well as IEEE Student Branch Counselor, BBD ITM, first I extend a very heartily vote of thanks to the Chief Guest, Professor Ascension Sir, who spared this time from his busy schedule to grace of the occasion. I would like to thank eminent speaker Dr. Elisa Barney ma'am for gracious crucial work and sharing with us your opinion and finding this present time. I would like to thank our director sir, Professor Bhavesh Kumar Chauhan sir, and thanks to all the volunteers because of whom we made first this function possible. I also extend thanks to all teachers for this cooperation in this. I specifically thank the people who have been the backbone of the event, our IEEE Student Branch team, IEEE Executive Committee member. I once again want to state that we are grateful to speaker here. We thank you for being with us this time. I has been great pleasure. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. And now we are at the end of this session. So for the better understanding, we have continued this events to 3 days. The first day we have done. The remaining 2 days, the second is the advanced signal processing technique for electromechanical system fault detections and diagnostics and fault tolerance control approach on the second day topic. And on the third day topic, we have a role of SLA service in the power system. So thank you so much for connecting with us. We will meet you tomorrow at the same time. Thank you so much.